Let's take a look at all things money matters now. Local trade is firmer with its global peers mixed as investors digest comments by U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. The U.S. Federal Reserve warned that the central bank may deliver a few more interest rate increases before there could be a pause. So what does this mean? Well, Simon Brown, JustOneLap founder, is staring into his crystal ball. Before we get there, Simon, good afternoon. Let's take a look at how we're doing at midday trade. The Rand having a better day today.
Afternoon. It absolutely is. I mean, we're down at 1708. Now, we've actually had a very volatile year, and it's only the 2nd of February. We were almost 1660 in the middle of January. We weakened out to 1750. But with Jerome Powell, and you made the point there where he's kind of saying, you know what, inflation's looking like it's been beaten. They're not going to take their foot off the pedal, but maybe just 2 more increases, 0.25% each, takes the US rate to 5.25. The market is kind of talking around, we might start seeing rate cuts by second half of this year. I think that's a little optimistic, unless they're talking December, maybe December. But if that means that inflation is looking better in the US, soft landing in terms of recession, then money's starting to flow out of the US. And we've been seeing this a fair bit since the last quarter of last year and looking for slightly riskier assets. And certainly South Africa is one of those. And hence the quite marked Rand strength overnight since the 9 p.m. announcement in the U.S.
Yeah, let's take a look at news from Kumba Iron Ore. They've warned that 2022 profit could have slumped by as much as 44%. Why?
It sounds really horrible on the surface. There are a couple of moving parts. Part of it is writing down of the Kumela mine. That's more than anything, it's accounting. I suppose let's be clear, there was cash paid up front. This isn't directly a cash issue here. But the two big stories is an iron ore price that in 2022 was very well below what it had been the previous year. In 21, we saw record commodity prices, and last year they still at elevated levels, but well off those records. And then the second part is simply Transnet, logistic problems. You know, iron ores mining in the Kumba's iron mining in the middle of the country. They need those Transnet lines to get it to port. They need the Saldanha port to be efficient, and they've had complications there. So those two together have really been the problem. All in all, the minus 44%, kind of in line with what the market was expecting. And in fact, the stock was trading a smidgen higher just a few minutes ago.
In fact, I'm in the studio with the CEO of the African Railroad Industry Association. We're going to have the conversation of Transnet just a little bit later on. But Simon, staying on Transnet, I mean, taking a look at the cost not only to business but to you and I, the everyday South African, what perhaps needs to be done, right? So we know all the problems plaguing it, but what are some of the solutions?
So I think one of them, and this is a proposal which is apparently out there, the Durban-Joburg line is essentially handing it over to a private entity to run for a 20-year period. We should be, there's two problems with Transnet. The one is those busy lines like Durban-Joburg where we see far too many trucks on the road. That's bad for the roads, it's bad for congestion, it leads to extra traffic accidents and the like. Rail is just a better option for moving goods, but it's got to be reliable. And unfortunately, Transnet isn't. The other is those dedicated lines, the coal line to Richards Bay Coal Terminal, the iron ore line to Saldanha. They need to be working at efficiently. We've got, at this point in time, record commodity prices in iron ore, in coal, and we're benefiting as a country. But if we were able to send out more and get that capacity to, the 100%, we would be benefiting markedly. And the benefit is quite simple. The companies make more profit, and then the government gets more tax because of the company tax. Our rand is stronger. All round as a country, we win from it. So it really is hurting us, the bottleneck that is Transnet.
Okay, let's take a look at Seriti Resources. They say the first phase of what will be South Africa's largest wind farm will come online in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, this is good news all around. It's going to be a giant wind farm. Yeah, it is this move to renewable, and we've seen it in parts of Western Europe where it's been gathering storms, Scandinavia especially, Southwest Australia. They have days where they're running 100% renewable. That march is absolute. We know the problems at Eskom. I'm currently sitting here being load shed. We know that story. We need more power. Now, base load, coal, nuclear, that is slow. It is expensive. expensive, it takes forever, whereas the renewables are significantly quicker to get up. There are challenges. The wind doesn't always blow. You need storage capacity. But they're challenges that can be overcome. And I think this is a perfect example of just such a project. And we're going to see more and more of it. And not from Eskom/the government so much. This is going to be private industry. It's even going to be the viewers, simply putting solar on our roof. Enough people put enough solar on the roof, that takes demand off Eskom.
Simon, this privatization, I mean, we just spoke about Transnet, right? And they want to lease from the private sector. Here we are with electricity. There's talks of independent power producers. While we're still digesting all of that, I mean, what is the cost, especially for the everyday South Africa, the working class maybe, let me say, in South Africa, when government fails to do what it needs to do when we are rendering things to the private sector?
Yeah, and you raise an excellent point there. The idea around putting solar is great. Who can afford to put solar on? I've got a friend who's looking at it. It's going to cost him around 100,000 rand. And that is a seriously large amount of money, particularly when a consumer's under pressure. But even if we were in a better environment, lower interest rates and the like, it's still a huge amount of money. And we're going to see a divide, is my expectation. And part of that divide is going to be the folks who can afford the 100,000 and the corporates, and then Eskom providing the rest. The key benefit is that every time a corporate builds a solar plant or someone puts panels on their roof, what that does is that reduces demand from Eskom, and therefore in time, Eskom's demand will be sitting at a much lower point, which it's able to provide. It's got capacity of over 40 gigawatts, but it's only doing around 25 at the current load shedding stages. As we're sort of eating away with that new production coming on, it helps Eskom service those who can't go off grid. The problem, of course, is that it's huge expense. We've seen the increases that are coming through. And that is the challenge that government has. How do they match that? What do they do with the giant debt load that sits at the core of Eskom? Because otherwise we get a dual electrical system, one for the corporate industry / richer, and then the rest left in blackouts and expensive power, which is the last thing we want as a country.
Well, here's a proposal, the declaration of a state of disaster where the energy crisis is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot around this at the moment, and it's been discussed at the high levels within the ANC, the National Working Committee, who is the highest decision-making body between elective conferences. We've, of course, just had Newzroom last year, December, when President Ramaphosa was re-elected. The question is, what does that really do? So it enables the Eskom to sort of bypass normal procedures. It allows government to step in and dictate. We've had one recently, of course, which was the COVID pandemic. The issue then becomes, well, does Eskom have the capacity? Do they have the skills? Do they have the budget? Does government? Eskom currently sits under Pravin Gordhan. There's talk of moving it under Gwede Mantashe. Of course, we don't know who ministers will be. We're waiting a cabinet reshuffle from the president. A lot of folks have said it's a terrible idea. I'm on the fence. I think that there can be benefit to it. There can be some goodness coming from it. The key point is, let's be clear, the current load shedding is a disaster. It is an emergency. And small things, Eskom's paying a premium price for diesel. They also pay the 2 rand and change road accident fund. Both of those seem ridiculous. That diesel is not being used on the road. Maybe just at a swipe of a pen under a state of disaster, we could lower the diesel price by Eskom for, 10, 20, maybe 30%. That would even help. And that is something which could be done literally in an hour.
Simon Brown, JustOneLap founder. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Still to come, we discuss all things